Hey everyone, my name is Garrett and I am the founder of Ambition in Motion, and I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our first workshop. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you've decided to invest in yourself to build a mentoring relationship with someone from your organization so then you can help amplify your own career prospects and opportunities to really help take your career to the next level. I'm really excited for you and what you're going to accomplish over these next 4 months. So during this video, I just wanted to give you an overview of what to expect for the program and how to prep for this upcoming workshop. Now, this workshop's title is called Transitioning into a Managerial Role. So maybe you're in your career and maybe you're about to start entering into a managerial role, or maybe you've been a manager for a while, or maybe you're not a manager quite yet, but you will be. This workshop will be extremely insightful for you. You are going to learn a ton about management and how to properly manage somebody and how to not properly manage somebody. If you have any questions throughout this workshop, please post them in the comments section. So I wanted to give you first an idea of the timeline of the program. Tonight is the first workshop. So pumped about it. All of our workshops are, by the way, going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and any time in between if you're somewhere in between in the United States. Our goal is that you have at least 3 meetings with your mentor, but ideally you meet more. Ideally, you meet more often than that. If you think to yourself, oh, I should wait, or I should wait for this to happen, or I should wait for that to happen, don't. Get on it right away. Build that relationship. I strongly encourage that, because the longer you wait, the more time you're putting off from building a great mentor relationship, and the more time you're putting off from actually really seeing the results and being able to apply what we're teaching in these workshops into your life. So have multiple areas of support. Take advantage of your mentor. Start building that relationship. Now, those 4 workshops are the first one's on transitioning to a managerial role. The second one is determining when is the right time to pursue additional education, or if it's the right time to pursue additional education. The third workshop is determining when is the right time to switch jobs. And the final workshop is on how to handle conflict in the workplace. So the really relevant topics, and I think that you're going to really enjoy these workshops and the guest speakers that we've brought in for you to learn from during these workshops. We will send you a post-program assessment to get your feedback. So this workshop is going to be roughly an hour long, and we're going to cover a lot of topics on how to transition into a managerial role. And so for you, my focus is on how can you go about making the most out of this. Really, the best way to go about making the most out of these workshops is to interact with us. When I ask a question to you, the audience viewing this, answer it, because here's the thing. I would rather you post your questions in the comment section, because if you got this question, I guarantee you somebody else in the audience does as well. So if we were to answer questions on an individual private basis, we're not really answering everybody's questions. But if you post your questions in the comment section, we can share this with everybody so then they can get their answers just like you got your answer. This program doesn't guarantee you a promotion or a new job. Really, the key is this program's for professionals who want to take their career to the next level. Like, we don't hand things out on a silver platter. Now, by the way, do these types of opportunities happen for the professionals that use this program? Absolutely. But you got to be open to it. You got to be willing to put your time in to go ahead and make the most out of this experience. If you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to come in negatively or skeptically, you're going to get negative and skeptical results. I mean, it's the law of attraction. If you come in with a negative mindset, you're going to manifest a negative mindset. If you come in with a positive mindset, you're going to manifest a positive mindset. It's all about how you view this system, this workshop, this opportunity. So come in with the right idea, with the right mindset, and you can make the most out of this experience. I promise that. So I just want to set the expectation properly. This is a program that does not hand out things on a silver platter. If you work for them, you can absolutely take your career to the next level, but it's about applying them. It's about actively meeting with your mentor. It's about actively networking and actually doing what you can to make the most out of this experience. Ask questions, interact, take advantage of everything we've got for you, and you will get the opportunities you desire. I mean, that's what this program's here for. If you think like, oh, I'm going to do the bare bones minimum, I'm just going to kind of have just 3 phone calls, and we'll keep them at the minimum length of time, and I'm just going to attend the workshop, not take any notes, not really make any comments, not really talk to anybody about what I'm learning, you're gonna get those types of outcomes. That's pretty much it. So I really want to encourage you to make the most out of this program. Take advantage of it. Ask questions, participate, and interact. Treat this program as fuel. Treat this program as fuel to help you get to where you want to be. If you're already burning and going strong, going hard, this program can help you get into the next level and accelerate. If you're barely burning a fire, barely burning an ember, and you really want to rekindle that and get yourself up, take advantage of it. Jump in. But if you think to yourself, you know what, I'm barely burning this ember, I'm not really trying to burn this ember, really there's nothing there, the field can only do so much for you. So the point I'm making is come in with an open mind and a willingness to work hard, and you can achieve what you want. I mean, have professionals use this program to gain a managerial role or negotiate a raise or build deep bonds with their colleagues or expand their networks? Absolutely. But did those outcomes come handed on a silver platter? No, they didn't. It's about how you can apply what you're learning in this workshop to make the most out of this experience. So I want to share with you a little bit about my background, because I think that helps give some context as to who I am, what we're teaching, what we've learned, and why this information is relevant. So for me, I personally needed mentors in my life. And this might sound crazy, but from age 15 to age 19, I was a drug dealer. At the end of my freshman year at Indiana University, I got arrested in an undercover operation by the Indiana University Police Department, and I got 5 felony distribution charges. I was expelled from school, and I had no idea really what I was going to do with my life. It hit my life like a brick wall. I mean, up to that point in time in life, I thought success was you go to school, you get good grades, you get a job, and then you just kind of find yourself, like as if it's puberty, it just comes and hits you. And nobody that I had ever known that I ever thought was successful ever was a drug dealer. So I either had to accept being a failure or redefine my definition of success. So I chose the latter. And it was a great decision for me. Kind of like back to the whole law of attraction thing. I opened my mind to what positively could happen from this situation as opposed to negatively. So I enrolled in a program in St. George, Utah after I got in trouble. And they exposed me to the power of mentorship, both on a personal level and a professional level. On a personal level, they were huge. I mean, they helped me come to grips with how I'd affected my family, my friends, my university, my country. I really didn't think that what I had done really would impact anybody or that anybody would care. And that was so wrong. And I really don't ever want to discount the power of personal mentors, because personal mentors can really help you make some serious just strides and have some serious growth in your life, because ultimately those personal mentors can help see you for you. And don't get me wrong, the professional mentors are amazing as well. And by the way, we can mix those two. They can both be personal and professional mentors. But I really want to stress the importance of being vulnerable in a mentoring relationship, just like I've been vulnerable with you right now sharing my story, because I know that when you're vulnerable, you're much more likely to be attractive in that relationship. You're much more likely to build trust. I mean, shoot, you can't even build trust without vulnerability. You have to have vulnerability. So when it comes to building a mentor relationship, I hope me sharing my story with you has helped inspire you to be vulnerable with your mentor and in your mentoring relationship. And just to kind of finish out my story in terms of how I actually got here from being a drug dealer who moved to St. George, Utah. About a month after living in Utah, I flew back to Chicago for the weekend to let my family know my life's getting on track. On that flight, I'm sitting next to a guy. I took a keen interest in who he is. I asked him questions, I took down notes, shared with him a little bit about me, but really I was focused on who he was and asking him questions and really learning about what he had to say, because people love to talk about themselves. I was learning that through a book I was reading called Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And by the time we landed, he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm the director of ground equipment for SkyWest Airlines." And he offered me an internship doing financial analysis on the spot. Didn't care about my background. He decided to take me under his wing and give me an opportunity, and that was so crucial. That was amazing. He didn't care that I might be going to prison sometime in the future. He didn't care really what my future looked like. He cared about me, and he wanted to give me a chance, and that was so crucial. It helped me really take some serious strides in my life and my career. About a year after living in Utah, I actually got very lucky. While I was in Utah, I started a nonprofit to help young men and women who had made poor choices with drugs and alcohol and help them get mentors too, just like I had gotten mentored by that guy at SkyWest Airlines. And the court system saw that. They ended up dropping my felonies to a misdemeanor conviction. Indiana University had decided to re-enroll me, and I started Ambition in Motion with the idea of how can I help people get connected with their careers. I mean, ultimately for me, my vision is a world where the vast majority of people, not a couple people, but the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. I'm here to try to help you achieve that. That's all I do, is to help serve you to get you to where you want to be in your career. Because the more satisfied you are with your career, the better of a society we live in, and the more happy society is, the better everybody's lives are. I don't know. That's just my way of trying to make an impact on the world. And, you know, if you're going through this right now as a professional and you're thinking to yourself, like, what is my impact on the world? You know, it could be anything. But I think if you're consciously aware of that and think to yourself, I want to make an impact on the world, that's a great starting point. So the point is, be vulnerable, and think about your impact, especially as it pertains to your story. Now, I want to talk about 3 keys to success for this program. The 3 keys to success for this program are honing your strategy, your story, and your state. Now, I said those in reverse order of importance. Your state is number 1. Physically, what is your state? Like your physiological state. Are you like amped up? Are you ready? Are you good to go? Are you in such a good mood that you're going to take on the world? Or are you stressed out, hunched over your computer, got bad posture, not feeling great? I mean, your first impression is everything. And when you're going into your mentor meeting, or a meeting with anybody for that matter, and you're coming in with some bad body language, I can promise you, you are not going to have a good first impression, and that will kill that relationship. It is very difficult to overcome a bad first impression. So, fortunately, there are some things that you can do to help you get yourself into a positive state. And they take like 30 seconds because your emotions drive your emotions. Now, you might have had the worst day in the world. And you might be thinking to yourself like, oh man, I got to meet with my mentor right now. I don't know how I can do this. Here's something you can do to get yourself into a positive state. There's a lot of things you can do. You can do a power pose. You can fake smile for 30 seconds. You could fake laugh for 30 seconds. But what I like to do is I like to shake it out, and I like to dance it out, and I like to scream at the top of my lungs. So what I want you to do right now while you're watching this video, and I know it might sound crazy, you might be in your house, you might be in your office, you might be at work, I don't really care. Stand up, shake it out, shimmy it loose. Stand out. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it loose, let it out, let it go. And the reason why I'm telling you to do this is because you are releasing endorphins to your brain, getting blood flowing to your brain. What this does is it gets you into a positive mood. It takes you from wherever you're at and puts you at a 10. It gets you ready to go. And your physical body, your physiology, your body is saying, thank you. I'm ready for this. I'm ready to take on the world. Your state is crucial. So when it comes to a mentor meeting, get your state right. You're going to give a positive first impression if you get your state right. If you're screaming at work, good for you. Amazing. I'm proud of you. That's awesome. You know, people might think of you and look at you like a weirdo, but that's okay because this is not a coolness contest. This is about you making strides in your career and getting a positive first impression with your mentor and with anybody that you want to meet. Now, the second key is your story. Now, what's a story that you tell yourself? Do you tell yourself a story for why you won't be successful or for why you will be successful? I mean, your story could be, oh, well, you know, I'm an introvert, so I couldn't possibly be good at networking or putting myself out there or trying to get a raise or try to be a manager because, you know, I'm just an introvert. Or maybe you think to yourself, like, I'm an extrovert. I'm crazy around people. I can't even handle it. I'm a word vomiter. I just can't even contain myself around other people. I couldn't possibly be good at networking or in a managerial position. If you tell yourself a story for why you will not be successful, you will not be successful. But if you tell yourself a story for why you can be successful, you can manifest that outcome. If you tell yourself a story, if you literally play in your mind how a situation could go the most positive way you could possibly go, you will get yourself to where you want to be. So I want to ask you right now, and I would love if you could post in the comment section, what is a story that you tell yourself for why you will be successful? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? How are you going to do that? Lay out your story of where you're going. It could be the next 3 months. It could be the next year. I don't really care. But put it out there for how you're going to be successful. Share it with the world. Share it with your community here because what that does is it empowers other people to be vulnerable and share their story as well. I'd love if you could share your story of where you want to go in the comment section. Now, the last key is your strategy. So what is the strategy that you're going to do to help you get to where you want to be? Now, this workshop is all about how to transition into a managerial role. So the strategy is going to be all about how can you go about becoming a better manager. Now, take the skills that we're teaching in this workshop with our guest speaker. Take these skills and apply them. One of the things that I love to do when it comes to strategy is to set up a routine. So what is something that you can do on a regular basis to help you reinforce this skill that you're learning in this workshop? Because if you're just here in this workshop and you're just watching this video and maybe you're taking notes, like that might stick. But if you actually teach it to somebody else, that is definitely going to stick. Exponentially, you are much more likely to remember the information that you're taught if you teach it to somebody else. So what I want you to do when it comes to strategies, I want you to take what you're learning during this workshop and I want you to apply it and teach it to somebody else. This could be a friend, it could be a stranger. I don't really care. But teach something that you learned that you thought was impactful and powerful to you. I love if you could do that, because if you can, you're going to reinforce this information, and this program, this workshop, this whole experience is going to be so much more powerful to you because you are reinforcing what you are learning. So the way that you can practice, find an accountability partner, teach them the skills that you are learning, something that you learn. And it could be anything. Like whatever nugget of wisdom that you heard from me or from our guest, teach that to somebody else. That will help you reinforce it. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited for you to embark on your mentor relationship. And in this mentor program, I'm really excited to get started with our guest speaker.
Hey everyone, welcome to our first workshop of the semester. I'm so excited to dive into our topic, how to effectively transition into leadership. So you might be a recent graduate, or you might be someone in your career, or you might even be a college student, and you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I would like to be in leadership. I'd like to be in management. Maybe for you, you're thinking, I've got visions of grandeur. I want to drive a Porsche one day, and the only way to get paid is to be a manager. Hopefully, that's not the only reason why you want to be a manager of people. You might be thinking to yourself, I like the idea of leading people. I really like humans. I like empowering people. I want to empower people, but I want to be able to develop the skills to develop that in myself. Hopefully, those are the reasons why you're pursuing a management and leadership position. Fortunately for us, we've got a great leader with us here today to talk about his experiences transitioning into leadership and how his career evolved into what it is today. Eldho Kuriakose, he is a leader. He's also in our executive mastermind group. Eldho, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Garrett. Thank you for having me.
So, Eldho, if you could just high level share with our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, my name is Eldho Kuriakose. I'm Senior Director of Product Management over at Pros. And Pros is a pricing software company. We do a SaaS solution, lots of AI, lots of rule-based approaches, very complex pricing logic, and general commerce logic that we support. So, it's a really complex space. We want to make it simple. We want to make it accessible to a lot of people. And I lead a team of about 13 product managers that work on various aspects of that SaaS platform to satisfy what our customers are looking for.
So I guess let's start off with your experiences in leadership. I guess maybe first question, and we don't need to name names here, but have you ever had a bad manager before? And what have you, if you have identified a bad manager, like what have you found to be a reason for someone, making some early mistakes, especially as a new leader? So I guess, yeah, what are some of the biggest mistakes newly promoted managers make when leading people, right off the bat?
Yeah, sure. The way to answer this question really reflects my own personal philosophy of what it means to be a leader. I fundamentally believe it's about being credible. And so there's a charisma aspect, there's a confidence aspect, there's a credibility aspect, probably as many C's as you want to throw at it. But I believe in credibility as being the most important thing. And I think especially a newly minted leader can make the mistake of is trying to fake that credibility. And then as soon as you do that, you lose credibility. And that's because typically the people that you're leading hopefully know a lot of what they need to be working on. In my example, in my case, and in most cases, leaders advance from having been doing that work to managing someone. And so the challenge there often is figuring out how much to step away from your day-to-day, but not step away so far such that you're too far distanced from it to the point where you're not able to credibly manage it. So I think that's the hardest balancing. When you sent me those questions, Garrett, I went and looked at ChatGPT and thought, how would ChatGPT answer it? And I wanted to make sure I didn't use any of those ChatGPT responses, because anybody who's listening to this could go do that too. So what I honed in on is really dialing in that balance between how much do you micromanage, which is a bad thing, and how much do you totally step away to the point where you're not very credible. And dialing in that balance, I believe, is getting that balance wrong is a mistake that many people can make very easily.
You know what? That's a great. I think that's probably. I think that I totally agree with you. I think that is the number one challenge of all newly appointed leaders, is finding where that balance is. Because I've seen one side of the pendulum where you're like, great, I'm a manager. I've updated my LinkedIn profile. Everybody's congratulated me. I want to be a success and I want to move into the next management position as soon as I possibly can. And I want to ensure that I get there. And the only way I know how to ensure it is by controlling everything. And so therefore you're like scorched earth. You're micromanaging everybody. No one gets to do a thing. Everybody has to ask you for permission to do anything. And it doesn't work out. You're not able to scale your efforts because ultimately, if they wanted you to be this crazy robot who could do an immense amount of work for, 5, 10, however many people you're leading, then that's what they would hire you to do. They wouldn't hire you to be an actual leader of people. On the other side of the scenario, I have seen leaders take the very laissez-faire approach of leadership, giving so much autonomy that there's no feedback given. And so no one's like, they're like, the inmates are running the asylum essentially. And and by that, I just mean like people are working and freeballing it. And then all of a sudden, some higher up manager is like, what the heck is going on in this department? And then they go to that manager and like, what's going on with your department? And they go back to his team and he's like, what's going on with you? What have you been working on? They're like, I don't know. You've been giving us any feedback on anything for months. So like, we've been working on this. We think we're doing the right thing, but I've got no idea.
That's right. Yeah, it is a really delicate balance, and it's that fundamentally comes down to that credibility, and I think building that rapport with your team so that they feel like you're a player coach. I think that's a good thing to shoot for, so that you're not totally on the sidelines, just always yelling out the moves. You're out there. You're kind of the captain of the team, but you're also able to step back and see the big picture, and keep building that big picture for your team. Keep building that vision for your team. Those are the things that make you relevant as a leader.
Yeah, you brought up credibility a few times. Let's talk a little bit more about that. I think it's a really interesting concept because oftentimes when people get promoted, this isn't always, but oftentimes when people get promoted into management, especially if it was an internal promotion, there were other people that were at one point peers of yours also vying for that position. And then now you go from buddy buddy to manager, direct report. And I see a lot of times credibility breakdowns when that happens because, you got this person over. Jenny thought she was the person who deserved it, but instead Shelby got it. Shelby's now the manager. And now Jenny's seething with frustration, mad at the person who ended up getting promoted, when in reality, it's not their fault. The person who made the decision ended up thought they were the better candidate for the role. And how do you go about managing that sort of credibility or that sort of scenario where you had previous peers and then, one goes above the other?
Yeah, that's I personally haven't seen that in my life. I've had the fortune of not having those issues. At the end of the day, it's making sure that ideally the person who promoted you gave clear boundaries to what you're responsible for versus what your peers now responsible for. If that hasn't happened, then you have the chance of getting into, why are you stepping on my toes? Why are you telling me what to do now, etc. Right? So it does go back to your leadership setting that expectation across the board. Now, if that doesn't happen, this is a great position to really step back, reflect on what's good for the org, and amp up your communication game. And this is when you get into these higher places in the organization, the boundaries start to blur. It's whether somebody is jealous and miffed, as you kind of pointed out that scenario, or there's just ambiguity, and it's common when you get to some points in the org that things are pretty ambiguous. It's not clear who's responsible for what. If you're a new person starting in, we can tell you, look, you own this little piece and you go deliver it, etc. As you ascend further into the org, it becomes ambiguous. And as a leader, your goal is always to help create clarity out of that ambiguity, and always see it as an opportunity to improve your communication, improve your listening, and improve your negotiation skills to know, look, these are the boundaries that I'd like to keep for my team, and therefore that means you own these aspects of it, right? And being able to engage in that and practice in that is ultimately what I would recommend in such a situation.
So I want to take a moment to ask the students a question real quick. Post in the comments section, who's a great boss you've had who you felt did an amazing job of balancing, giving you active feedback, but not micromanaging you, and really you felt like earned credibility with you? Post in the comment section. I'd love to, get a shout out of a great boss that you've had in the past. Eldho, I want to talk about balancing tactical with strategic, because I
Hmm.
think that there's a lot of professionals here that are thinking to themselves like, okay, I want to elevate some leadership, I want to elevate some management. Maybe they go to their boss and say, I'm ready for the Catalina wine mixer, put me in, coach, I'm ready to go. And
Yeah.
the boss is like, cool, I love your enthusiasm, I think that is excellent, fantastic, but these tactical things that you are responsible for still need to get done. And so you might think, okay, I'm above this stuff, this tactical work, like I don't need to do that anymore, I want to be in the strategic zone. And you get into the scenario where you want to show your eagerness, but you also need to, on the flip side, prove your credibility to your boss that you can get your stuff done and take on the strategic work. How do you suggest a professional go about conveying that and communicating like, hey, I am ready to take on more strategic work, and I have the credibility and the work history to show that I get my work done and that things don't drop.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first, have a vision for why you want to do this. Have a vision for your organization. Um, Demonstrate that you're thinking more end to end and seeing the full flow of things. Let's say if you're in engineering, you want to understand the sales side of things really well. You want to understand what a pipeline is and what the conversion from that pipeline looks like, what drives those things, for example. That's just one example, but in any of these situations, it's not one or two people that make it happen. So you want to start to become a person who starts to see that full picture and the interaction between different teams in making the end-to-end benefit to the business happen, right? So having awareness of that full end-to-end, and then having a vision for it, having a clarity in your head about what's probably not working, what is working, etc., in that end-to-end flow, that's critical. You don't have to be right about it. I mean, I've been in positions where clearly I was so sure that, we just need to tell sales to do this or marketing to do this. Um, but, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have a strong opinion, try to drive it, and have it be corrected by someone else too. I think ultimately you want to demonstrate that you can engage in the complex problem of the business. That's going to just improve your communication skills, improve your ability to understand multiple perspectives and incorporate them. So expose yourselves to all of that, and at that point, hopefully, you'll start getting noticed as someone who understands the wider picture. That's how personally I've seen it work for me. Beyond that, you want to create a stage for yourselves, give some talks, be jump up to present to sales what the latest feature is. Get into, see if you can provide a keynote in some kind of forum, train sales, all of those kinds of things that puts you on stage, puts you as someone who's conveying a vision. That is all good for you, right? And it builds your own credibility, your own clarity about what's important, and it allows you to put stuff out there and have it be challenged.
Yeah, I love that. And you really highlight, I'm a big fan of Dr. Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion. And in that book, he writes what is focal is causal, which essentially just means what people see, they perceive. And what you're describing of being in front of other people, if you're out there presenting, if you're out there doing a variety of different things, you are putting yourself in a position to be seen, to be heard, to be observed as someone, as a prospect for leadership. Whereas you might, the opposite can be true too. It's like you might work your tail off getting a bunch of work done, and then all of a sudden you just happen to be texting on your phone at the office, and the big boss walks around, sees you texting on your phone. Doesn't matter how much energy, effort, and time, doesn't matter if you pulled three all-nighters in a row at the office to get this
Yeah.
work done. If the big boss sees you on your phone doing whatever on your phone and not working, that's going to taint that person's perspective of you because that's all they saw, not all the hard work you put in to get things done. So I love what you said about just putting yourself out there and being in front of people, because that can be a great avenue for that. You also brought up a point about mistakes. I want to talk about that real quick. How do you go about owning mistakes? Maybe share a story. Like, what was the time that you made a mistake as a leader? How'd you go about owning it? And how would you suggest other people do as well? Because mistakes inevitably happen, but we don't want to be known as those leaders that point fingers, make blame, masquerade it as something else. Like, how do you go about owning mistakes?
Yeah, that's a challenging one. Some of the mistakes that I've made have been not knowing my boundaries. I think it comes with a little bit extra passion and a little bit extra commitment, or you know, too much attachment to an outcome, let's say, and that's a level of maturity or immaturity on part of early leaders. And I had that situation where I felt like I knew everything and others didn't get it, and acted as such in certain forums, and it didn't benefit my cause or my position at all. How I came about it, it's everything is personal style, right? I took some time to just step back from that level of active engagement, and allowed folks to speak up and gave more of the air to the room, basically, right? And and then having more one-on-ones, because I think once you get into that type of a situation, you really want to kind of 360 yourselves a little bit and get feedback from various people to gauge, you know, how they reflected on the way you carried out that situation. Um, and it's a process. There's no perfect answer to any of this stuff. But it is, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity to get to know yourselves better when you make a mistake. It's an opportunity to get to know your peers better and how they handle you having made a mistake. And all of those, use those as more tendrils and fibers to build good relationships. That's ultimately what you could do with those things.
Man, I love that you brought up just obsess or just being so attached to an outcome. I think that's something that like every person can relate to the frustration of or the objective of. And I love your solution of just opening the floor for more perspectives. I think that's awesome. And it can be hard to do that, especially if you're the top dog in your, organizational hierarchy. It can be really hard to open up the floor for different perspectives because at the end of the day, objectivity diminishes the higher we go in any organizational hierarchy. Like the higher up we are, the less likely people are to challenge our way of thinking. And
Yeah,
so if we become obsessed about a certain way of doing things, we are stifling innovation because it's not allowing other people to propose potentially even more innovative solutions because our minds aren't open to that potential.
correct. Yeah, and it also opens up folks to bring more of the skin in the game. Like when you're the one who has all the proposals and ideas, and others, it may be great ideas, but if they didn't come up with it, they just don't have skin in the game. So there's a strategy about just kind of stepping back, allowing people to walk in and build their own skin in the game around it.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's so true. And man, that's exactly right. Man, that is so relevant in so many different ways. I'm like harkening back to thoughts and memories of just scenarios where that's so relevant. On that topic, we talked about strategic and showing that we're strategic before. What if we're in another scenario? What if we were managed by someone who's a micromanager? And I feel like if we are the person who becomes so obsessed with an outcome, that's more or less a bad recipe of eventually becoming a micromanager. Because then we're clipping everybody on our teams as wings. We're just essentially saying, hey, don't do it this way, do it my way. Don't do it this way, do it my way. Eventually, if you are micromanaged for long enough, you're going to say, okay, how do you want me to do it, boss? Like, I'll do it however you want me to do it. I'm not going to spend any brain power thinking about it. And then the boss gets irritated because they're like, you show no initiative. You don't ever step up with new ideas. It's like, do you expect anything different? You've been micromanaging for the last however many years. And it's ultimately led to people just not using their brain anymore because they're sick and tired of being rebuffed for every new idea they bring about to the table. How If you have been in a scenario where you've been micromanaged for an extended period of time to the point that you kind of feel like your wings are clipped, how do you break out of that cycle of being an order taker versus like a strategic thinker?
Again, I can't I can't relate to that situation, luckily, but I can relate to a slightly different situation. I think maybe this is a more nuanced and complex situation that hopefully some folks will find useful. There's a situation where you're managing a team, but then your leadership or management may be micromanaging your team. So you're in the middle, like you're trying to give your team autonomy, but some other teams are taking the autonomy away from your team, and it may be someone more senior and so on. And so those are some of the challenges that can happen in big organizations, small organizations, where when you're in the middle of the managerial ranks, you're trying to do often the right thing by giving space to the junior folks. But
so hold on
there's
to make a silly TV show reference. I like the thing I think of when you describe this is like all those cop TV shows where like a local cops come in, and then all of a sudden the federal cops come in and they're like, this is our jurisdiction. And then some other like really specific niche police officers come in and they're like, no, this is our crime scene now. I'm being silly, but what you're describing makes me think of that in a very short nutshell of like who's in charge and who controls who and what and how things are done.
Sure. Yeah, and that can happen, especially in large companies, very easily. And as you said, in government organizations where you have a lot of territory grabs that are happening, right? So how do you manage that? Not easy. I think at the end of the day, you want to try to zoom out, put some objective goals, state some objective goals, see if everybody can line up with, hey, guys, I know we're all disagreeing on certain things, but this is what we're trying to get done, right? And see if we can get at least head nods on that. And then if the disagreement is on the tactics, at least that's good. At least the strategy and goals are aligned, and we're arguing tactics. That's fine. That's a much easier problem to solve. Even if the goals and strategies are not aligned, that's a much bigger issue. And that's where I think some level of detachment, some level of allowing this mix of people to figure each other out is probably good. I think a lot of times we don't, as individuals, give time for it to do its thing. Time has its own way of allowing people to discover each other, discover their pros and cons and such. And we feel like we have to get everything done ourselves. So there's a piece of just stepping back and allowing some of that stuff to form. And again, it's a bit of detachment, which I personally, over time came to value a lot more, because I think it benefits one's own mental health, as it does also, again, allow folks to kind of step into their roles. I think in those cases, the best thing you could do is to keep helping individuals speak up on their own behalf. So I try to do that a lot with my team, where if there's somebody shy who's being told exactly what to do, but they have ideas, but they're unable to, muster the courage to bring it up, you want to coach them to, be more comfortable speaking up, right? And those are relatively safe things to do. Like, we can always say, look, we need to give this person a little bit more time to complete their thoughts. And those are kind of, you end up becoming more of an MC or an umpire of conversation than trying to drive a given outcome, right? And you start thinking about yourself in that way.
That's awesome. Okay. I want to take the time to ask our viewers a question real quick. How do you go about aligning your strategic initiatives at your company? So how do you go about doing it? How do you go about aligning your strategic objectives at your organization? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn what process you use, or maybe you don't use a process. And, maybe then the question is, what would you like to be doing? So then you could align your strategic objectives at your organization. Post in the comment section. We'll love to learn more. So Eldho, we're kind of touching around this. We're talking about strategic, we're talking about objectives, we're talking about all these sorts of things. How can you as a leader go about properly setting your expectations with your direct reports? How do we go about just, and this doesn't actually have to be for their individual work. This can also be setting their expectations for the wide scale thing. Like maybe we're a manager and we've got a direct report who's really hungry. They want to run with the bulls. They want to be management. They want to be on the fast track, the emerging leader track, whatever an organization calls it. How do you go about setting expectations about what's realistic? Because those promotional opportunities may not be available at the organization, depending on how the economy is going. Not because they're a bad employee, but just because it's not available. How do you go about keeping people excited, engaged, and properly setting their expectations properly, so then they're still excited and engaged for the work, even if a promotion's not available right now?
Yeah, so there's two kind of pieces to that question, right? So there's a piece of scarcity of promotions, and then there's a piece of how do you set clear expectations. So I'll break those two apart. So with every one of my direct reports, I have weekly one-on-ones, and we go in pretty deep on, hey, what are you working on today? How are you thinking about the problem, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an aspect of the work itself, and we make sure that we use Confluence pages or whatever to make very explicitly clear what they're expected to do, And there's a balance of micromanaging versus not, but you have to know your individual that you're working with, because if there's someone pretty junior, someone's pretty new, you've got to give them pretty black and white things. If someone's pretty senior and you've seen them execute with ambiguous direction, great. You don't have to tell them everything, and you want to kind of constantly feel out the right level at which you want to give direction. And so we do that on a regular basis on the day-to-day stuff. Now, when it comes to the promotion, we don't we plan that out way up front. We start thinking about, hey, you're here. I see you, in this position, or you tell me where you want to be, and we kind of chart out a path that's reasonable, right? And the good thing is that our HR team actually has a career ladder, and they proactively set expectations for how long a given rung in the ladder takes to move on from. But again, those are good at setting expectations. It's not absolute rules, by the way, because people could skip rungs and so on, and that has happened. So that those things help us set expectations. But we look at all sorts of venues to get people to where they need to be, whether it's executing a project internal to our company, or being on stage for conferences and things of that nature, right? So we kind of expand all of the kind of dimensions over which they could demonstrate their skills, whether it's within the company, outside the company, within the industry, et cetera. And we kind of just strategize that out over the course of roughly 18 to 24 months. And again, it's nothing perfectly set in stone, but it gives them a clear picture of, they can then look at conference calendars, or they can look at various things and say, well, I want to be a speaker in that conference, so I need to prep content here, right? So it's really just a matter of planning it well, in my opinion. And there's many aids that we have to do that, both from our HR team and then just the broader industry that allows the growth path.
No, that's cool. That's good. I really like that expectation setting exercise. I don't think every company does it the way that your organization does, and I think that's a really powerful thing. Because if you don't set expectations and you let people's imaginations run wild, if you're a collegiate student and you're used to, semesters running on a 3 to 4 month cycle, you're able to see A's and the fruits of your labor very quickly. It's like, I moved from accounting 1 to accounting 2. Cool. I did that in a 6-month period. Why can't I go from individual contributor to manager of individual contributors in that same time period? Yeah. So I think if we don't have expectations set out in front of us ahead of time, it can be easy for us to formulate improper expectations. And so I really like what you shared there.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the industry that you're in, there's, like product managers have some people have thought through this and put together a framework. If you're in supply chain, there's a clear industry progression that you could follow. So those are really good, harnesses and scaffoldings to build things around.
No, I like it. Last question. What do you use to continue to develop your leadership abilities?
Sure. Yeah, I thought about this, and I don't want to leave the team with a bunch of podcasts, and I use a lot of YouTube podcasts, all of that stuff. But I won't go into much of that. You all can find the ones that make sense to you. What I like to focus on is, a lot of this is about communication, and you can't really read about communication and get good at it. You have to keep doing it, right? And so find ways to expose yourselves to challenging communication situations. That could be with your significant other. and not to say pick fights, but I mean, this obviously happens, right? There's disagreements, and so when you think about all of those things, that whether it's in your personal life, whether it's with your kids, with your significant other, maybe within your church, within your community, anything that exposes you to complex communication situations, definitely get involved in that. I mean, don't sit on social media and type stuff and be a keyboard activist or anything like that, but get into something. Ideally be in the real in the present space with that person, and not even remote, and then feel those emotions and feel what it feels like to uh, you know convey to someone, bring them on the same page, understand their perspective, etc. There's no alternative for that. I mean, of course, there's tons of books, and I'm sure you all can find those things, but find ways to get exposed to that. Second thing I would say is,
Wait, hold on a
found,
second.
yeah.
I want to hear the second thing. I want to ask the viewers a question real quick. One question, post in the comment section. What can you do right now to practice improving your communication and just having hard conversations? I love that what you shared. I think communication is one of the most important things of being a leader. I want to learn what our audience, our viewers, or students can do to improve their communication, or at least how they want to practically apply that. Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn more. All right, what was the second thing you were thinking of?
Second thing is actually very easy to do tactically. Take an improv class, and that thing actually massively transformed how I think on the spot, and I engage, and there's many classes around. There's a station theater in Houston. There's Merlin Works in Austin. I don't know what's in Dallas, but there's some really good groups out there, and it's really fun. And it pushes you, it gets you out of your comfort zone, and it gets you communicating, gets you thinking on your spot. So I highly recommend some kind of an improv class. Maybe $200, if anything, it'd be well worth spend.
I love it. Great suggestions. Eldho, this has been a fantastic workshop. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your insights on how to transition into management. I think this was really insightful. Students, thank you all for being here. Eldho, any final things you'd like to share with our members before we sign off?
It really is an act of getting to know yourselves really well. Leadership is an act of really getting to know yourself really well, getting to know how others think, how well you listen. So, it's one of those things that constantly pushes you out of your comfort zone, and it forces you to kind of rethink what you thought was true constantly about yourselves, about others. So it's a really fun space to be in. And we need a lot more of leaders, and we need a lot more leaders that are authentic and credible. So looking forward to seeing you all out there.
Amazing. Well, Eldho, thanks for your time. Students, thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See you, everybody.
Thank you.